In this video, let's go ahead and make a toy helicopter. So we are going to cover modeling and then rigging and animation. And for this example, I didn't do textures just because this video is kind of running a little bit, ran a little bit too long, but you can easily texture it, or if you don't want to texture it, you can just color the materials of the helicopter because it's kind of a simplistic toy-like helicopter anyways. All right, so let's get started. All right, so let's jump right in. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to poly modeling. I'm going to grab a box and let's start with the box. I'm going to go to mesh and do a smooth. I'm going to switch it to exponential. I think that is better. I'm going to go to object mode, turn on my wireframe, and the very first thing right away, let's go ahead and just select the part of the helicopter that is going to be the windows. I'm going to press Ctrl E to extrude the windows in, so maybe give it kind of a nice thickness so it's a little bit fun and cartoony. I'm going to select this shape and maybe squish it a little so it feels a little more like the helicopter, maybe expanded. And to shape this even more, I think it would be better if maybe we jumped into the side view. So I'm going to press spacebar and go into the side view. Turn on my wireframe here as well. And now I'm just going to pull a couple points. So I'm going to grab this front. I'm going to select kind of the front side, the front of the helicopter, press B. And let's go ahead and adjust our soft select. If you don't see these tool settings, just double click on your tools and you should see that. And let's just make this just maybe a little larger. Maybe pull this forward a little bit so it's a little more interesting. And then for the back, for the tail, I'm going to grab these points here and maybe let's turn this down just a little bit and just start pulling kind of this portion out. I think something like that should work. If we wanted to, we can play around with changing kind of the shape here, but I think this is pretty good. I'm going to go to object mode, press spacebar to go back into the perspective view and just take a look. I like all of this, but I think that these points here, press R, should be maybe a little skinnier. So let's go ahead and actually press W because I do have symmetry on. I'm just going to pull these in. Next, I would like to grab all of these points, press R, and I'm going to jump out of my symmetry mode and just kind of scale these in, just like that. All right, so that's going to be kind of the back side of the helicopter. All right. Next, let's go ahead and keep working in the back. So to do even more, I'm going to select these faces here, these two faces. And there's a couple ways we could do it. We could extrude this out of this base shape, or we can of course also model something and then do a bridge to connect it to. But I think just for the sake of this tutorial and keeping it simple, let's just keep extruding. So I'm going to press Ctrl E and press W. I'm going to press B to turn off my soft select, and I'm just going to keep pulling this out, kind of the tail. Press R to scale this in, and you can see how it's starting to slowly shape into kind of a toy helicopter, right? I'm going to press W, maybe position this a little better. Let's do another extrude. Press W, move this out. And now let's do the tail. So I'm going to, for the tail, I would like to grab all of these points here. And let's go ahead and straighten them so they're all kind of aligned with each other. I think that's a little, will be easier to control. Let's go to face mode, grab these faces here, press extrude. I'm going to press W and just pull this up. All right, very nice. I'm gonna press spacebar and go into my side view, and I'm gonna clear my history just to make sure that this is clean and error free. So just a good practice to once in a while clear your history. I'm gonna press W and just kind of maybe shape this a little better so it's a little more interesting. And you can see because I extruded this part, these edges are really sharp, right? And I don't really want, maybe I can pull this in, doesn't really matter, but maybe I don't want this to be sharp, right? So how do I fix this? Well, if I select my shape, I can go to Mesh Display, and of course I could do soft edges, or we can go to soft and hard edges and go into the options and take a look. Let me reset my settings. So this is 30 degrees. Let's go ahead and say apply and see what that gives us. And you can see that if I go into object mode, and let's go ahead and turn off our wireframe, you can see what 30 degrees does. So it creates some sharp edges, maybe in places where we don't want them. And honestly, I'm not happy with this. So I'm going to select this again and switch this to, let's switch this to like 50 degrees and do apply. And you can see that this feels a lot better. Now I can see that this window is really smooth. My edges that are 90 degrees are really sharp. And I'm kind of liking this. And I like that these are sharp. So you have to play around with different angles and see what makes sense for your shape, whatever you're building. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and turn our wireframe back on and keep going. So next, I'm going to go ahead and build the leg. So for the legs, what would be the easiest way of doing it? I think it's just to grab this torus here, and let's just create something like that. Grab our rotate, hold down the J key, and snap this 90 degrees. All right. I'm gonna make this kind of wide. And maybe also let's go to attribute editor, and maybe let's turn off the subdivision for the height. I don't really need it to be that dense because I am building kind of a low poly model here. All right. I'm going to select these faces here and just delete. And maybe let's go ahead and select all of these, delete, double click, delete. And now I'm left with this. All right, from this, I can go into my side view. And I can see that this line right here is kind of the ground, right? So I would like to move my helicopter up a little bit so I have room for the legs. Let's go ahead and get this into position. So maybe it's a little smaller, but something like this should work. Let's grab these points here, and we can do a couple things. We can do something like this, but that actually doesn't look good, right? So let's go ahead and instead select this entire edge by double clicking on it and then pressing extrude and then switching to move and just kind of move this out. So I think that that works. Jump back into the side view and just make sure that it feels good as far as the shape of this goes. I like this. I think this makes sense. All right, I'm gonna go back into the perspective view, and now let's go ahead and close this hole here. So I'm gonna double click on these edges, do mesh, fill hole, and I'm gonna do the same thing back here. I'm gonna select this by double clicking on it. Then I'm gonna press G to repeat the command. I'm gonna grab my knife tool, and I would like to, let's go ahead and make a cut here. That makes sense. And let's go ahead and make a cut here as well. All right. Another thing we can do is maybe grab let's go ahead and grab these points here and maybe just bring this down a little. So it's kind of a little it's a little more interesting as far as the end of this kind of a leg piece. I'm going to bring this in, press W, and just move them around until it's a little smooth around, right? So I think this looks good. We can even take these points, press R, and scale them in a little. All right, I think that works. And just one more time, I'm gonna grab these guys here and just bring these in as well. And one of the things I like to do when I model is I always spin around and make sure that it looks good from every perspective or every angle, right? So that looks really nice. Again, we can select this and go to Mesh Display and do a soften and harden edges. And remember, it's set to 50 degrees, so you have to make sure that you like what you're seeing and it makes sense. If you don't, you can also try soft edges and see if that feels a little better. Maybe in this case, applying soft edges makes more sense. This part here, actually these edges here should probably stay sharp, so I'm going to do hard edges on those. But all of this should be smooth, right? So that makes sense. All right, I'm going to grab this guy here and let's just move him aside. So that's going to be kind of in this area. And let's go ahead and click on our mirror button, which is located right on our poly modeling tab. And it's this button right here. So we can do a mirror. And we do want to make sure that the axis for the mirror is set to X, right? So then we have 2 on both sides. I'm going to press Ctrl S to save my work. All right, so I have something like this. This is nice. Now let's go ahead and create some kind of a connection between our chopper and our legs here, right? So for that, what I would like to do is I'm going to select both of them. Let's just select them and combine them into one. And what I would like to do next is I'm going to go into my side view, and I'm sort of looking at these two polygons here, right? I would like to make some kind of a connection to this leg. So I'm going to grab my cut tool and just going to make a cut. I'm going to hold on the shift key to make sure that it's straight. And let's go ahead and make a cut here and make another one here. And now what we could do is we can go into, let's go into our verts mode and select these points, and just pressing the W key, we kind of align it with the topology of the helicopter, right? So again, I'm looking at these two here. So I want the legs to connect somewhere around here. I think that's nice. So next I'm gonna go into my perspective view, and now you can see, right, I have extra topology on my legs. So I'm gonna select my legs, hold on the shift key and select the body of the helicopter and do a combine. And again, it's a really good practice to clean your history, because you can see that it starts to build up. So I'm gonna clear my history. And now what I would like to do is I would like to make a connection between this leg here and this side part of the helicopter. So how do I do that? Well, what I could do is I could maybe select all of these faces here. I don't want to select the bottom ones, right? Because that's kind of the bottom part. But what I would like to do is extrude, and maybe let's make kind of a fun little extrusion. So something like that. All right, so the next thing we should do is maybe let's make a connection between our legs and the base of the helicopter, right? So one of the things I noticed right away is before I make this connection, I do need to make sure that the body of my helicopter is aligned perfectly. And right now, you can see that it's kind of off center. So to fix this, what I need to do is I'm going to go into my front view, and let's go ahead and double click on these faces. And this is, not necessarily a problem on your end, but on my end I do need to center this. So I'm going to press W and hold on the X key and just kind of snap this right in the center. Go back into the object mode and go back into the perspective view, and now I do know that this is perfectly aligned, so I can use my symmetry to continue modeling, right? All right, so how do I make a connection between this part and kind of the body, right? I'm gonna, to do this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab these guys here, these faces here, and let's go ahead and do an extrusion. And then I'm gonna click on the outside box ones and kind of do something like this. Maybe pull these in a little. I kind of like that. We can press extrude one more time and maybe pull this up. I think that's very nice. Let's do extrude again. Click on the outside of the box and pull these in. Maybe pull this in. And next I need to delete these faces, so I'm going to press delete. All right. Now, one thing I need to keep I need to be aware of is the number of edges that is on each side, right? In order for me to make a bridge. So if I double click on this here, I can see that I have 6, and that is super important, right? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to select these faces here, make an extrusion, and do the same thing, do something like this. Maybe extrude it one more time, maybe pull this out, and let's do it again, extrude. Do something like that, and then press delete. All right, and now I should be able to bridge the two. So let's go ahead and select these edges here, and holding down the shift key, I'm gonna select these edges down here, and let's do a bridge and see what that looks like. That's fine. And the reason it's giving me a green color is because Maya is saying, hey, I'm creating a new polygons, but I can't find the material that you're using for this, right? So one thing we could do is select the entire mesh, right click, and go to assign existing material, and let's just reassign, some of the materials that we have here. So in my case, it's going to be this one. All right, and now I would like to do the same thing on this side as well. And I should have used the symmetry to do the same thing on the other side, but because I didn't, it's perfectly fine, because it will give me an opportunity to show you, a cool little trick. The trick being, I can always go into my front view, and I can select half of my model, and because this is symmetrical, right, I could just simply flip it over to the other side. And to do this, I'm going to go to Mesh, Mirror, click on Options, and let's take a look. So one of the things we want to flip on X, and we do want to combine with the original. And let's go ahead and just do a mirror. And you can see that very quickly you can mirror your model as long as it's symmetrical, right? Very nice. Another thing I could do is I could just go into verts mode, and let's use a new tool called target weld. So I'm going to grab this guy here, and what I would like to do is I would like to eliminate this line. I'm not happy with it, so I'm just gonna what I'm gonna do is I'm going to weld it right to the side, just like that. I think that is what I want, and I can even do that same thing on the back side as well. I think that is better. This way I don't have any kind of lines running across. And I could do the same thing on this side. So again, just drive it to the edge. On each side. Yeah, I think that's a little better. So it's nice and clean, right? I'm gonna select the entire thing, go to Mesh Display, and do a soft and hard edge. Very nice. I think this looks exactly as I wanted. I'm gonna turn my wireframe back on. All right, so next, let's go ahead and create a kind of a propeller for the top, right? So that could be as simple as just grabbing a cylinder. Let's put that in position. Let's go ahead and go maybe to our attribute editor and maybe do something like this. Now, one of the things that's really important is if we make a propeller, you have to figure out how many blades you want, right? And at this point of in modeling, this number right here, the subdivision axis, is going to be super important because it's going to, well, at least in this case, kind of dictate how many blades I can have, right? So let's figure this out. How many blades do I want for this toy helicopter? So let's say that this was a blade, this one was a blade. So I kind of want to obviously have spacing between. And you can see that a problem is going to be is if I wanted 4 blades, I have spacing that doesn't work, right? So this is not going to work for 4 blades. So I do need to create one more side. So 8 or even number is what I want, right? And next I'm going to, let's go ahead and center this. So I'm going to grab this, hold on the X key and just snap it to the center. And let's create our blades real quick. So do something like this. Let's do an extrude. Do another extrude, maybe pull this up. So now these are going to be the blades coming out, and then this is going to be kind of the top. So I can extrude this again and do something, maybe something like this. All right, so now for the blades, I'm going to select my blades. So all the way around, just like that. And next, what I would like to do is I would like to scale these in, something like that, so they're a little skinnier. And then let's do an extrude and pull this out. And now what we could do is we can change the thickness at the very end. So I think that works well for like a toy helicopter. Now, one of the things obviously we do need to fix is this here. And there's a couple different ways we can fix this. We can go to Mesh, Edit Mesh, and do a poke. So that's one way of fixing it, right? Another way we could fix it is obviously, go into a verts mode and do like a cut, right? So you can do cuts and make sure that you are, well, also make sure that your edge flow is not on in this case, because I kind of want to maintain the form. But this is another way you could create topology. So you have to decide if you want something like this or you want something like this. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because I'm not subdividing this, so I don't really care. But for this case, I don't need the bottom polys at all. So I'm just gonna grab this and let's jump into the side view. And I'm gonna position my blades right kind of up here. Maybe let's maybe scale this down a little bit. And If I thought this was too high, of course I can control the height, so maybe something like that. Let's take a look and see how that's looking. These, I like it, but I think this seems a little too short. But at the same time, I don't really want it to hit the tail, which of course I can make longer as well. But let's, I'm gonna rotate this. All right, I'm gonna go with something like this, and I do want to make these longer. So let me select all of these points, press R, and just scale them out. I think something this size feels good. I'm gonna go back into my side view and just make this tail a little bit longer. Press W, just move this out a little bit. All right. Go back into the perspective view and take a look. I think this feels pretty good. The only last thing that I would like to do for my helicopter is I would like to also have kind of a side propeller here, right? So I'm gonna grab this, do Control D, and move this up. Grab my rotate tool, hold down the J key, and move this 90 degrees. I'm gonna press R, and I'm gonna scale this down. Go back into my side view, press W, and let's go ahead and just position it to where it needs to be. All right, and it's definitely not the right proportion. So I would like to, let's see, let me think about this. I'm going to select the center, press R, and just really make this much larger. And let me just shape this a little better. So I'm going to scale these, but I want to scale them the same size on top and the bottom. So I'm going to turn on my step snap, and let's just kind of snap these maybe 4 times here, and let's do the same thing here. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. So this way I know it's the same size, right? And another thing is I definitely want to move this back more. So if I have 2 different objects, how do I move them at the same time? So in the vert mode, so I could select both of these. Select this one, hold down the Shift key, and click on the body, and then I could go into this button here, select by component type. If I select that and go into vert mode, it's gonna allow me to select both shapes, even though they're not welded or connected or merged. And now if I press W, you can see I can modify both of them at the same time, which is really cool. So I'm gonna move this out something like this, and I would like this part to be a little thicker. Very nice. Let's look in the perspective view. All right, next I'm going to select all of this and combine it into one, clear my history, center my pivot, and let's look at the outliner and see that we are indeed left with just one shape. And it's really nice. The entire mesh is only 460 faces, so it's super low poly, right? This is great for like a mobile game asset. At any point, if you felt like you wanted this to be too, if you want to be maybe puffier, right? So like in my case, maybe I want it to be a little puffier as a toy helicopter. One thing you could do is just select all the points and then go into transform, switch it to normals, and Now find the letter N and just kind of scale this up or down so you can control kind of the thickness of your helicopter even after you modeled it. So kind of essentially inflating it, right? So in my case, I'm gonna make it just a little bit thicker so it's a little even more toy-like. Just for fun, why don't we also make our blades spin? So I'm gonna be thinking of this as a game model, right? So instead of just taking the blades and separating them from the mesh, let's go ahead and assign a couple small joints that we can then rotate. And the reason you don't want to separate your mesh if it's a game model is because normally the less pieces you have, the better it is. So like if this was a moving animated game object in the game, you want to reduce the draw calls on the game engine. So it's much more efficient for a mobile game, for example, to be one piece. But that doesn't mean that we can't rotate our blades by just using the joints. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to double click on my mesh here in Outliner, and let's just call it helicopter. All right. And to make the blade spin, all I'm going to do is just something really simple. I'm just going to add 2 joints and maybe a base joint, so maybe 3 joints total. That's all we really need. So let's go into the top view. And from the top view, I'm going to go to rigging, skeleton, and do create a joint. And I'm just going to put a joint. Let's go ahead and turn our wireframe on so we can see. I'm going to put it right in the middle where the blade is. So somewhere here. If I turn this X-ray joint button, you can see that I can see where that is, right? Another thing I can do is I can go to the attribute editor, and in the joint tab drop down, there's something called radius. Let's go ahead and turn this way up, maybe to like 15. So we can see this a little better. And if we wanted to, we can make it even larger. How about 20? All right, so you can really see it. All right, so this is gonna be the controller for the top blade. And let's go ahead and add one for the side as well. So for that, I'm gonna press Enter to make sure that I exit the joint creation tool. Then I'm gonna select it one more time and put a joint right here. And let's go ahead and make this kind of larger as well. So this one will be 15, right? I'm going to press spacebar, jump into my side view, and I'm going to take my joint 1 and using the W key, I need to make sure that I am moving in the axis orientation of world. I'm going to place it right in the middle of the blade. Somewhere right here I think is perfect. I'm going to grab this one and place this one in the center of, you can press F if you want to zoom in. You can also hold down the V key and literally snap it to the center. So maybe that's actually the best way of doing it. And maybe let's go ahead and do that same thing to this joint. I'm going to select it. I'm going to press F on my keyboard. I'm going to zoom in, hold down the V key, and I'm going to snap it right to the center. All right. Very nice. So now we have 2 joints that are properly positioned. Let's add one more joint that will be connecting them together, right? And the larger one will be kind of the body of the chopper. So again, I'm going to jump into my side view, grab my joints one more time, and place it maybe somewhere right in the center, somewhere right here. Let's go ahead and again turn the X-ray on so we can see our little dot. And for this one, I'm going to make it really large. How about 50? So something ginormous, right? All right, really nice. So now we have the base, we have the top, and we have the tail. And now we need to connect them. So I'm going to select both of these first. And if you don't want to select your mesh by accident, you can always come up here and turn this off. So this will make sure that you can't select your mesh, right? So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to select this one, hold down the Shift key, select this one, and I'm going to hold down Shift and select the third one or the final one. And I want these to connect to this one. So I'm going to press P on my keyboard, All right, and now as you can see, everything's connected, which means if I select this joint here, these two will be automatically selected, right? Which means if I grab it and move it around, right, everything is moving with it. That's perfect. So this is going to be our simple rig for our helicopter. All right, so the next thing we need to do is actually bind this to the mesh. So how do we do that? Well, let's go into our perspective view. Again, I'd like to turn on my X-ray so I could see it, make sure everything is properly positioned. I'm gonna select my mesh. I'm gonna go to my channel box and I'm gonna make sure there's no history. If you have any history here before you bind, go ahead and clear it by pressing this button. Then let's go ahead and hold on the Shift key. Let's click on our big body joint, which is this one. Make sure you're under rigging, go to skin, bind skin, let's go to options, and I'm just going to reset this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to not do anything. I'm just going to say apply and close. All right. The next thing that I need to do is assign the blades just to this top joint, right? So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my joints. So all of this should be rotating, which is perfect. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go to skin, paint skin weights, and click on options. And I'm going to select my joint 1, which is going to be the top right here. And I am going to go to my skin weights under brush. Make sure that you're on replace. Opacity and value is 100%, so both of these are 1. And I'm going to flood it. So what that's going to do is going to assign 100% value to this joint, right? So you could see the white being everything that this joint is going to control. And you do see some gray here as well, which means this joint is currently affecting all of this down here as well. So I don't want that. So to fix this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to select, and I'm going to do an inverse, go back to paint weights, and instead of flooding it 100% up, I'm going to dial this down to 0 and flood it one more time. So watch what happens to the body of the helicopter. It turns black, which means this joint is no longer affecting any of these verts, right? It's only affecting the top blade. All right, and let's go ahead and repeat the same process for this joint as well. I'm gonna go to faces actually and select this blade here, go back to paint. I know that this guy here, I should have named it, I didn't, but it's called joint 2. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna flood this 100%, right? Assign all the verts to this joint 100%. And I'm going to repeat the process of reversing. So inverse, go back to paint weights and dial this back down to 0 and flood this. Okay, and now let's test our rigging. So if I take this and begin to spin it, it should only spin the top of the helicopter and nothing else. So this is perfect. You see nothing else is being affected. And vice versa, if I grab this and try to rotate it, you see the same thing, only the tail propeller is spinning, which is great. And of course, most importantly, if I grab this, it should move the entire helicopter, right? So we can fly him around. Very nice. All right, so that kind of concludes the rigging portion. And let's go ahead and maybe animate it as well. I'm gonna go down to my timeline down here and let's switch this to something small, maybe, I don't know, maybe 12 frames. So it's currently 24 frames per second, which is fine. And my timeline is 12 frames, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select this first joint. I'm gonna press S on my keyboard. And when I press S, you can see a keyframe has been set. There's a red line indicator. Now what I can do is I can drag it all the way down to 12. I'm going to press S again, grab my rotation tool, and let's go ahead and hold down the J key, and we can just rotate this 360 degrees. All right, now if I press play, you can see that this is spinning, and it's spinning with easing in and out, so I need to fix that. So how do I fix that? Well, I need to select my joint, let's go to animation, then let's go to Windows, Graph Editor. Let's make sure that the joint is selected, and I'm going to select this curve here and click on this button here to make it linear, right? So now you can see there's no easing in and out. It's not a wave, it's just a straight line. If I press play again, you can see that the blade is spinning at the same speed. So it's not changing the speed, right? All right, very nice. So now let's go ahead and do the same thing to this one as well. I'm gonna grab this, click on this joint, go back to frame 0, press S, and then again go to frame 12, press S again, and holding down the J key, that's going to give me my snap. And now I'm going to rotate this maybe this way, 360 degrees. I'm watching the bottom left of my screen there, so I can see 360. All right, and same thing. Let's go ahead and select this curve and press linear. And now if I press play, both of them should be spinning at the same time. Very cool. All right, and now technically if this was a game model, right? In the engine, the actual chopper would be controlled with code or some kind of a controller, right? But because we're just having fun, maybe we can go to frame 0, maybe we can lift this up a little off the grid, and let's press S to set the first keyframe. Let's go back all the way to frame 12, press S, go to in the middle, press 6, go to frame 6, and maybe just a little bit, I'm gonna change the Y position of the chopper. All right, and now if I press play, it should look like it's kind of hovering a little bit, and if it's too much, I can of course change that as well, maybe. There we go. All right, let's press play again. So now it's really nice. You have the subtle hovering of the chopper, and you have the animated blades. Very cool. All right, I hope you had fun in this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.